one time they're mad, hit it one time you yacht. To the middle of the field, don't be a bomb, don't it be like quarterback. Still in the field, holding bomb, throwing it like quarterback.
Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the worst possible matchup for each style, and explaining on why I think the matchup is bad. I don't know how long this video will be, but if it turns out to be a certain length, I will split it into 2 videos. And as usual, please remember that these are my opinions. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting with the first style, Basic. The worst possible matchup for Basic is Hitman. Basic has no downsides, so it's pretty dangerous against any style. However, Hitman is genuinely a bad matchup for almost every style. And what makes Hitman the worst matchup for Basic is clearly the range difference. Now, it's not as if Basic doesn't any chance at all, it's just the fact that since no other style can threaten it as much as a good Hitman user. And that's why Hitman is the worst matchup for Basic. For the next style, Long Guard. The worst matchup for Long Guard to me is Kimura. Long Guard, for some reason, already has a lower stamina gauge than other style. So it's easier for you to run out of stamina using this style, and with Kimura's debuff, you'll run out of stamina in about 3 punches and or 2 dashes. In other words, you won't be able to output any good damage at all. So if you get hit with enough body blows, you might as well reset. The worst matchup for the next style, Counter, is going to be Iron Fists. This is because Iron Fists takes less damage than other styles, and Counter's big thing is its counter damage, so when that's taken away, you basically have another Basic. A casual style with no gimmicks or tricks. And although Iron Fists doesn't really have a good block, and Counter can pound through block really well, Counter's base damage isn't going to get the job done. And yeah, you can feint, but it'll still take a good bit of counters to take Iron Fists down. For Smash, the worst matchup is Hands Low. Out of all the counter/speedster styles, Hands Low has the most durability and has some solid counter damage. With Smash's wide wonky punches, a good Hands Low user can dodge about 70% of Smash's M1s. Feints will come in handy, but not only are Smash's punches wide, they're not that fast either. And the M2 is as slow and obvious as ever, giving Hands Low enough time to dash out or counter. So within a few minutes, or when the Hands Cow user gets warmed up, it's not going to look great for Smash. And finally for the uncommon styles, Turtle. The worst matchup for Turtle is also Kimura. Turtle is already a slow moving style, and topped with Kimura's debuff, it basically gets the same treatment as Long Guard. Here the block is really good, but it's pretty useless if you can only throw 4 punches per barrage, and your guard can't hold up forever. You'll basically become a sitting duck. Getting into the rare styles. Starting with Charge. The worst matchup for Charge is Slugger. Looking at the rock paper scissors boxing theory, it explains itself. Sluggers are usually not a great matchup for end fighters. What really makes this a bad matchup for Charge is the lack of a backdash. Although Slugger's block damage isn't as bad, it won't take too much for Charge's block to break. And when it gets low, Charge basically doesn't have a way out against Slugger's permanent M1 damage. Walking backwards will only get you so far. You can dash around, but you'll eventually get caught or run low on stamina. The biggest problem though is Slugger's M2. It's not exactly hard to dodge Slugger's M2, but things can get tricky. This is because Slugger's ability to change the release time of the M2. Usually, this is escaped by backdashing, but as I stated earlier, Charge has no backdash, so the only way to escape it is dodging left or right, or blocking. Block can only hold up for so long, and dodging to the side has a not so high success rate against Slugger's M2. Skipping Trickster because I haven't used it for myself in far too long to judge. On to Corkscrew. The worst matchup is Hitman. Not only is the range an obvious downside for Corkscrew, with Corkscrew having a short range, but Corkscrew's Regan can only do so much against a style like Hitman, because of how much damage Hitman can output. And it's going to be hard for Corkscrew to get some really good damage in because he's genuinely gonna have to be inside his opponent. So this is going to nearly look like a one-sided match. The worst matchup for Kimura is probably Freedom. Freedom has a higher stamina gauge than any other style, and moves faster than any other style, only in Whirlwind mode however. But with these feats, we can assume Kimura's debuffs won't hurt Freedom as much as it does other styles, which makes Freedom its worst matchup. Skipping Hammer because I haven't used it much, so on to the Mythical. Starting with Ippo, the worst matchup for Ippo is probably Slugger. This is for the same reasons as Charge, but it doesn't mean Ippo doesn't have a chance. In fact, if you ask me, I'd say it's in Ippo's favor, but there aren't many other styles that pose a threat higher than Slugger. Hitman is a good threat, but that really isn't that bad of a matchup for Ippo. In fact, I'd say it's casual. For Hanslow, the worst matchup is going to be Hitman. This is only because no other style poses as much of a higher threat than Hitman. For Wolf, the worst matchup is Turtle. Being honest, Turtle doesn't really have much over Wolf but strength. However, that's all Turtle needs. The most dangerous thing about Wolf is its double M2, which seems to be a bit op right now. But you can easily dodge the first M2 when you see it coming, and with Turtle's high block, it easily cancels the second M2. In other words, Turtle cancels Wolf's M2, which is Wolf's biggest weapon. Not only that, but Turtle also puts out way more damage than Wolf. So this battle belongs to Turtle. The worst style for Bullet is Hitman. Bullet's jabs won't be able to reach Hitman if he is managing his range well, and other than that, Hitman beats Bullet in pretty much every other category. So overall, it's a pretty bad match for Bullet, which makes it the worst matchup. And finally for the Mythics, the worst matchup for the shotgun style is Counter. This is because of shotgun's weakness to counters. Shotgun's punches are fast, so it would be able to counter a lot of styles, but it's just about the same speed as Counter. That topped with Counter's block damage and base damage, which is enough to do solid damage to Shotgun. It's just a bad match overall for Shotgun. Now into the legendaries. Starting with the Slugger style. The worst matchup for Slugger is basically any style that does good block damage, but if I had to choose, it'd be Wolf. When Wolf gets going, it can output some really good damage, and can bulldoze through your block. And that's not a good sign for Slugger, whose block is broken very easily. For Kronos, the worst matchup has to be Kimura. Kimura's debuffs literally robs Kronos of everything that makes it so great. Without its speed, Kronos is just a sack of potatoes. Not even focus mode can save Kronos from Kimura. I don't really use Iron Fists, but if I had to guess a bad matchup, it'd be Ghost. I can't exactly explain why, but that's what I'm going with. Skipping Ghost because I didn't remember the last time I used it. On to Hitman. The worst matchup for Hitman is the Kimura style. Hitman already has bad dashes, but topped with Kimura's debuff, Hitman will become a shadow of its former glory. The worst matchup for Hawk is the Hitman style. Hitman absolutely bullies Hawk. Hawk has no upsides against Hitman. Hitman's M1s absolutely bulldoze through Hawk's block, and Hitman's base M1 damage explains itself. Not even the sway back can save Hawk, because that is easily cancelled by feints. In other words, Hawk hasn't choice against Hitman. And finally, for the Freedom style, the worst matchup is the Turtle style. With Turtle's block and M1 damage, Freedom can genuinely output much damages and having the lowest HP in the game. Against Turtle, who basically shares M1 damage with Ippo, it won't take long for Freedom to be put down. And that's all I have for this video. Let me know in the comments what you agree and disagree with and what are your thoughts. And as always, thanks for watching and see you next time.